This is without doubt the game of the day from the Tata Steel Masters round 2. So Anish Giri with white here, he kicks off with pawn to d4. His young opponent Gukesh goes knight f6, we see c4, e6, the knight comes to f3, and now d5 takes us back into the Queen's Gambit declined here. We see knight c3 played, and bishop b4 is the Ragozin variation. And Giri now goes bishop to g5, which is one of the most aggressive ways to meet this, fighting fire with fire. And after h6, he now takes on f6. If you come back here, things can get really sharp after g5, knight e4, etc. But Giri does this one, the queen recaptures, he now goes e3, castles, and the rook comes to c1. And now here we see Gukesh wanting to play c5, but if he does it straight away, then Giri can take here. After pawn recaptures, he can take on c5, and he's landed Gukesh with an isolated queen's pawn. He can try and gang up on that one. So what we see instead is pawn takes on c4 immediately, and I'm highlighting this because it allows the bishop to develop in one move. But then you get c5 without the captures here being possible, and Gukesh is starting to free up his position a bit. Now Giri just castles here. He allows the takes on d4, and then he plays really sharp stuff. He could recapture here, say with his knight, and just keep a solid edge. But he goes knight e4, hits that queen, it drops back into e7, and then he goes a3 to kick away this bishop. It drops back here, and now again he could capture this pawn with, say, the queen. Then after knight c6 or rook d8, the idea is that the queen comes to c5, and you just have a small edge as white because black's got some development issues still needing to be resolved, but nothing too much. Black's got the bishop pair long term. But instead of capturing with the queen there or even the knight, we see pawn recaptures. Now this is more aggressive. You're landing yourself with a worse pawn structure, but you do gain outposts on c5 and e5, which I'm drawing here. That's the key thing to understand with the IQP, the isolated queen's pawn, is that you can use those outposts for minor pieces, and you can also now use the open files that isolated pawns create. So rook d8 now played, pressuring that pawn immediately. And there was a weird maneuver here from Giri. So he wants to bring a rook to the e-file. If you do it straight away, the bishop is blasting, you lose an exchange. So b4 is very logical, it's actually the top computer move, but then you do kick the bishop back to start targeting this pawn a bit more. Computer then wants knight c3 and d5 at the right moment, trying to liquidate that pawn. But Giri plays something that keeps a bit more tension in the position, a bit more attacking, rook c2, Gukesh carries on developing with bishop d7, and then he swings his rook to the e-file via that method, staying off the dark squares. Now bishop c6, so the queen comes to c2, overprotects this knight, looks down here towards the king, and now here we see Gukesh go wrong, and it's a very tough position to play already. For example, if you play the most natural move here, knight to d7, just carrying on developing, well, you're already running into pawn to d5. After bishop captures, pawn takes, then there's knight e to g5, and you're opening up a checkmating threat, and you're also opening up this attack on the queen here, so black would actually have to give up the queen. So this is some of the problems in the position, and it's why one of the best moves is actually taking on e4 and then going knight c6. But Gukesh goes bishop b6, targets this pawn, but Giri just ignores it. He doubles the rooks on the e-file, setting up deadly threats. Now, if that pawn is taken, we see the same tactics unleashed that we see in the game, so I won't show you that line. Instead, we see the king sidestepping here to h8, coming off the diagonal. Now, the best move was actually bishop d5 to try and protect this diagonal. But okay, king h8 played, and now can you find the brilliant move in this position? There are now two brilliant moves in a row to carry on this attack. So the move to play here is knight e to g5. You're just uncovering this queen to deliver checkmate down here. So that one has to be taken, which was played. And then can you now see the follow-up move in this position? This is where it gets really beautiful. So the move to play is rook takes on e6. What's the idea? Well, after pawn captures, which is just forced, and why wouldn't you take an entire rook? Rook recaptures, you're kicking this queen away from the protection of the g5 pawn, and then you can hop with your knight and deliver this same checkmate. And because the queen can't come to f6, it's covered, what do you do but give the queen up? Now if you try, say, queen f8, just to show you this, there's knight g5, you have to cover the mate here with something like queen g8, and then the queen invades. And there's a simple threat, check here, deliver mate once the queen blocks. You can come back with the bishop, but then it gets chopped. This is a sample line, and it leads to mate. It's just completely unstoppable. So we didn't see queen f8 here trying to save that queen. Instead, we see captures on e6. It is the best move. Bishop recaptures, and now Gukesh at least gets to chop that knight so that it can't hop into here. But does Giri recapture? No, he carries on the attack with queen to f5. And that's the threat which I'm drawing on the board. Check the king and actually deliver mate because it can't escape to g8. So we see bishop e4 now trying to cover this one, with the idea being that if you check and don't take it, which we see in the game, well then you can cover. Now this looks devastating, but then there's g6, bishop takes, and now rook d7 can protect everything laterally, so you're not actually crashing through. So coming back here, Giri takes this bishop, best move, and now rook takes on d4 is Gukesh's follow-up idea, because he's setting up ideas to checkmate on the back rank. He's also hitting the queen, of course, stopping it coming across here. Okay, so does the pawn do that. So the queen now came to f3, and it's a good multi-purpose move because it covers the checkmate but also threatens a mate. So g4 stops the queen from coming there, but now it checks down here. I mean, look at this unfortunate knight covering the rook from the back rank. The king went, and now we see bishop f5 check, king h6, and this is a really nice, cool, calm move. So you want to check, force the king up, and then check from here. But if you do it like this, you lose a bishop. So that's why we see bishop c2. It covers the mating threat once again, and it now sets up this whole idea, and it's just unstoppable. You can't do anything. I mean, say you bring the rook here to hit the bishop, also threaten this pawn with these two, well then there's check, king goes, check, and you're just actually getting hunted down. King h5 is the way to give up most resistance. Then you check, king goes, and you mate in two like that. If you want to see another devastating game played by the genius Magnus Carlsen, then check out this video on screen.